네, 신발 가르쳤으라.
So anyone else would like to share what they picked up from the last discussion?
I like the example of the hand for how suffering can be by changing the mental state. So in my direct experience, it feels like thought is very alive. So through that example, I could see how a single thought, changing a single thought, can completely change the experience of the body and mind from suffering to the cessation of suffering. So that was interesting to me, and how the whole lecture seemed to highlight the importance of responsibility and right action. So I find it really amazing, like how that change in thought, if when, for example, we don't amplify the suffering, we don't project our suffering, and it's simply like a switch in thought. But when we switch it to the thought of responsibility and right action, then it opens like so many possibilities of well-being, of general well-being and happiness. And yes, that was very nice.
Yes. 네 ngazogi lagbala nasudan gi pejishara. Odi instem la suboda chonsonsra. Tinala ni ngazogi da tokbalara ngazogi. Susu namdo tokbara. Tokbagi pa drotanasra ani dungi la jigi nyowajera di chagdu doya. Ani nyowa di shukchir doya. An tele dode ani tokbagi pa dromadanera. Ani kari yimba di ani yimbari la ngwelendara. Tinde chemaji totuna ani nyongwa la thila dungi gi nyongwa la di thesam gi ani nombo simsor den nombo ma chwa di samlo di tangdan di ani na do thonsons ani pena chashana da kurangi samlo tangdan la chenasra nganzo gi dinde toba gi pha droda susu gi namdo gi twinsha wa samma imbara ani nganzo gi da susu la ginkhuriyo ba dochi susu gi denja susu la ginkhuriyo ba tela dene ni nganzo gi le sangbo dugyo ba da susula dewaji dugyo na le sambo dugyo ba ra ani samlo dendedo la pha lokate na ani susugi denja susugi diji la jora susurangi ginkuri ba tela samlo khoryo ngo das di pento boda chonsons
신발.
anyone else yeah.
I noticed there was multiple responses going on for me, recognizing the truth of what you were sharing, and also a tendency in me to protest, like what happens if someone is directly seeking to harm me or someone else, then being open. How to be open? Is it wise to be open when someone is seeking to take advantage? And then my mind got stuck on that. What is right action when someone is seeking to harm?
Tene kurangla nyongsor dendedo wo chonsonsra geshima la gi ma chedinang jimbe kapsan ani samlo dendedo khoyonsosra suzugi da komshina masonara samlo gi chesuna masona tiwa dendeji lessons ene nganzogi kisi mishindaji gi ani kanzunera kasebo gi susula netseda chiegi ani kulun yunasra ani susula da susula nutseche ra susula ni kepsanle dendegi ni kulunji yu chawa dharan zamgi yunasra tidu zaman nganzogi loka yangbo la jura loka chimbo chegore la tidu zamba ni le sangbo la ni patendo nyegore la jura kap tidu zamba ni nganzogi di donglen khandi chego yuna samsamgi tiwa shuchimbo da jile hitus
데데 데데 로야 미카시 두제라 지당아도 밀려야 보치고래 돼요 담도 따야래더라 가시래 수수 잡아 줘야도 선수 계산해도 선수는 여주시나 뜻딜래 담봉아제 맞지 수수 유예기 탑시다 미드네 이거 하거나 라디 가스나 계시처럼 단도 데틸 되나 캐나라지 짜라 토셔도 저런 늦체 주행인가라 아니 유디든지 하고 있네 담봉에 유예기 탑시다 라 아니 양 데네 마제라니 양 세키체야 개침보라 Ra, Jimmy di kangi karatin di all Google Ra, the national the Sambuda di chair Martala. Kizikala mania and the China, me did the Tarin de Kishmura, the Sosus of the chair.
So this is a very practical question if we think about it. And now when we say that in our interactions with others, we need to be open, open in the sense, be willing to accommodate others' concern. Now herein, if you do realize from the outset that this person has an intention to take advantage of you, to harm you, and so forth. Now, but still, our reaction to that situation is firmly within our own hands. Now, it is our responsibility to ensure that as a consequence of our reaction, we do not experience further suffering. That as a consequence of our reaction, that we do not inflict further suffering on the other too. With that, there is still a sense of concern, not only for yourself, but for others. Now, taking this into consideration, you can take a wise decision, a practical decision. If you do realize at the outset that they are out to take advantage of you, to harm you, then it makes practical sense to avoid such people. And if you can, to be able to communicate to them effectively that this is not something that you appreciate at all. And if that doesn't help at all, then practically you have to avoid such people to ensure that you do not pursue an interaction or a relationship like that further. So now when we say that we have to accord the same dignity that we ourselves desire to others, now in such situations, with regards to your general spiritual practice in Buddhism, we place a lot of importance on the union of wisdom and method. And herein it is important to employ what we call skillful means or skillful method. Now, skillful means is simply an expression of that innate intelligence that we have as human beings to be able to gauge for ourselves the pros and cons of a situation. And we should rely on that intelligence to guide us, whether we should avoid such a person, whether we should distance ourselves from such a person who is out to harm us, who is out to take advantage of us. But because if we do not employ skillful means, then maybe it becomes misplaced compassion, misplaced concern, and so forth.
아니 가디는 셈도 코토나 마가야 소데 남도 마르데 근데 인자 탐나들 캐다 종카르도 따네 다 근데 지금 저기 남주 배제다라 라 시럽디.
So, for example, let's look at this. Let's look at this situation. If there is someone who is very angry with you, then you are their object of anger, and then it is important at that moment to understand that if you are the object of anger, then now you are also in danger of facing the consequences of that anger that arises within the mind stream of the other person. So as such, at that moment, it is important that you distance yourself from such a person, because it doesn't help the situation at all. And you will be liable to be at the receiving end of physical harm, verbal abuse, and as such in this moment, it makes sense, practical sense, to distance yourself from such person, to not just with regards of a concern with your own well-being, but with regards to the manner in which, when you stand in front of them, then as you stand as the object of anger, this further intensifies the anger in the other person. And it is important at that moment to also appreciate the fact that since someone is consumed by anger, someone is consumed by an affliction, then the attitude and behavior in these moments becomes helpless. They cannot help it. And as such, it is important to distance ourselves to avoid this kind of people. And more importantly, it comes from an honest reflection on your own practice, the strength of your practice. Because it could be the fact that you, even if you are a practitioner, the level of your practice of forbearance doesn't really allow you at that moment to ensure that your reaction doesn't add fuel to the fire, so to say, in the situation. Because if you react similarly, retaliate in a similar manner, then it doesn't really help the situation at all. So this is what we call in Buddhism employing skillful means. Skillful means is an expression of our own intelligence to gauge for ourselves what is good for ourselves and others in a situation.
아니 심바예.
Others? Anyone else?
Can I ask a question?
지워지잖아, 디그레스.
This is related to skillful means. So, when a moment of suffering arises, in order to, when someone else has hurt us or something of the sort, similar lines, then the question that comes is whether it is necessary to go into the meaning.
Into the?
Whether it is necessary to attach to the meaning, or when it is, or when we can see that it is about how thought is changing the state of the mind, and how what I'm perceiving is a projection of my mind, then it's simply about skillful means is more like a technique or a strategy. So basically, there seems to be a creative liberty there where we don't necessarily need to go into meaning, or we can simply employ skillful means like good thought, or like that is something that comes. How much into meaning we go?
Now, maybe can you specify what exactly do you mean by meaning?
So, for example, it's about stories. Like how, for example, when a moment of suffering arises, we can really go into the stories of blame, of victimizing, of and at some points it feels like is that necessary when actually those thoughts can also create suffering, and skillful means would be to simply detach and employ a good strategy in the moment. For example, to even label hurt as hurt, or but when I change the thought about it and changes, then nothing is as we deem it to be in that sense. So that is where I'm coming from. And there is another question.
Maybe we translate that first. Yeah. Tiwa dirtita ngoyi nganzugi ni tab keba la jora. Nganzugi nangchunal tab keba la di songyung di zamba ni zo di da nganzugi namdo da tokpa ge yora. Pa drota ne ni chik yu jik chunggi yoba ra. Ni yu digi nyongwa di ya ni namdo da tokpa ge pa drota ne ra. Drota ba di ne ni nyongwa di dubgi yores ra. Ta di la indi zamba nganzugi tab keba nguni donglin chego re la songi yorwas. tab keba pechu tangola di zamba ni nganzugi da susu simna la namdo gi cha mambo ji yora da. Namdo gi pa chun sha jo, namdo gi drota sha jo ji mambo ji di zamba. Ta tiwa dodoro di khari dula na ani nganzugi ta di la yundi zamba nganzugi nyongwa dungye gi nyongwa la jora. Dungye nyong la di ta pa namdo gi drota ne ra. Yu de la namdo gi pa drota. Di la tene ani nyongwa ji drubyong gyo res. Ani ta tiwa tokdo di la yudu. nganzugi semgi phaane drota dinde chiyungde zama nganzugi tab kheba la jora. Susugi samlo khesu dawjire doas. Thamadela ra. Susugi samlo di juwa tangna sira. Samlo di juwa tangna ani nyongwa thiya juwa droju doas. Awati lai.
네. 지단 그래라. 지단 맞아 망보증은 생기 넘도 그라. 소소 똑바다는 다 대응한테 라이마. 지단 가서 동에 지루려나 차 근데 동에도 기식 빼도샤 나바이나야 단도라. 빼팅 서지 샤와이나. 딱 칼로데. 난투이 디지폴라 셈 마샤니. 라. 셈디파 소소 나이 강해져데. 티야 대응을 지도해주다. 산 땅땅 시에나 라. 배선 가능로셔는 지랑 나와도 동의를 문제 바래라. 소소라 무즈 바이 동의 제고 올때 잠장한 줄로데 밥카지니 나들이 나야디 아니 얘기 제왕하마게 세려 디파스 아샤지데 다 봐셔서 찍제. 대링 얘기 루텐 디간라 다투어디 빼 가오충라네. 지난 동의를 봐 대응을 봐 토잉을 봐 지도해 되는다. 라. 렌데 켈렌지나 다리 ngai lude dile ngala nyongwa ngara mhenga ta robot chair khane chera kewa shimara nyong ne dile gang chera dende do samata ra ta anchig ni ya sam jacham ta wa na tari susu chig na wa na ngegi na judi maji simje thangchig dunge jora tigi chap chewa sho san sanlo loi phembal tende ta na ya kyan mijig na gorde mi chame gi na ko chewa san san ta da dende ta de chena sa dran shi chung do ra 맞아 로이 펜발라네 베켄자르다 베는 아주 리질은 자고야나 쇼기 닝로이 펜바디 나디 리젤은 자고사나 로이 펜바 드니 땅 사디가라 지난 자들이 깨바바도 레는 뭐데 칼레 카그마 가선 코사 간 레인데 바여라 당보네가 아다 쇼바네가 디 리자도 무슨 루기메 디 갈데 거알레기르나 케데 루투에 호레마 라 미기 센슈레오다 로이 펜발레데 베케쳔바라
So this is indeed true. That the attitude and the motivation that we cultivate really affects our experience. And now, to give you an example, now this is with regards to true practice. Now, for example, from a Buddhist perspective, a practitioner can, as opposed to simply coming to terms to accept suffering as a reality, can actually begin to take joy in suffering through transforming their motivation. So, for example, from a very, as a small example, if you are suffering through a physical illness, then in a moment, at that moment, it doesn't, we're not denying the fact that there is physical suffering and there is mental anguish as a consequence of it. But a practitioner can begin to think about it in this manner, that you take joy that you are suffering at this moment. By thinking about it in this manner, that by the fact that I am suffering right now with this physical illness, all of my karma, the negative karma that I have accumulated over countless lifetimes in the past, is now coming into fruition at this moment. So as such, that karma is being purified in this moment. So this is one manner. Now, from a very broader perspective, more particularly with the cultivation of love and compassion as a part of awakening the mind of bodhicitta, then a practitioner begins to meditate and think about it in this manner, that by the fact that you are suffering with a physical illness at this point, you begin to visualize that, and visualize with the aspiration that by the fact that I am suffering with this physical illness right now, may all the negative karma of all other sentient beings ripen in me at this moment. So as such, you begin to open up your motivation. And when you begin to kind of open up your motivation, transform your motivation in this manner, then your own sense of personal suffering begins to mitigate. And as opposed to that, you cultivate joy even in the moment of setbacks and challenges. And now, when we think about it in this manner, maybe we might think this is something beyond us. But it is very important to appreciate the practical way in which our mental state and the aspiration and the motivations that we develop in our mind impels and affects our actions and the results of our actions. For example, if you wake up in the morning and you decide very decisively for yourself mentally that I'm going to hike up to the top of the mountain, then when you actually go hiking, you wouldn't feel tired when you reach halfway. You still are motivated, you still have the courage to climb to the top of the mountain. Now, if you wake up early in the morning, you half-heartedly decide to hike up in the mountain, and then without even reaching the top, not even the half of the mountain, initially you will begin to struggle to hike. So that's the manner in which our mental state, the aspirations, the motivation that we develop in our minds impels our actions.
아니, 저 심어지 나서.
You had another question?
Yeah. Just like a little follow-up on this, like, can it also be deduced from that all meaning and all our projection is inherently by virtue of it being, it isn't intrinsically existing as we deem it to be, because it's, if we notice, it's ever changing. And so, if we think of it as a of like a curated fiction, then we have this sort of liberty to kind of create whatever. In a sense, that is one thing that's coming up. In a sense, like
I'm not following at all. Maybe can you...
okay. It's hard to communicate.
Maybe we take some time to articulate the question, and we'll pick up the question later on.
Yeah.
그 뒤에 등가 싫어 고츠기면도 네 this 제네 삼라당에 연적은 직송.
네, 그런 빼다샤네 레톤 아니야더라.
Maybe you can share like a more personal example, and then we can make sense of the question.
네, 신발.
Anyone else would like to share? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a family member that is really dear and close to me, and that person also says that she really loves me, but then, the family member has a lot of anger issues, and over the years my Dharma practice has been really helping our relationship. But I came to realize that I'm also grateful. I'm just trying to change the discernment of our relationship. As in, I'm grateful for her because she's really testing my patience. But then on the other hand, there's been a lot of verbal abuse. And there's a part of me that's just tired. And so I'm not sure how to see this relationship anymore. Should I be grateful because she's actually really helping me on the Dharma path to practice, you know? Or, I'm also a bit tired of the abuse, and I'm questioning her affection towards me because she claims that she loves me, but then she hurts me so
Kurang trio the dins, kurang la nangmi ra, pinja ra chies ra. Ta sempe nyebo, semta nyebo ra, ni dindri jeans ra. Ni kurang gi ngala ni tsawa yang yore lan lagi yore, tsawa yore ra. Ina ya kurang la da kongro sa chu cho chi ra. Kongro gi kanyi shu chimbo shi uchi yore ra. Ni kurang gi da nangchu nyamlen ra wala tenne ra. Ni kurang gi da pinja di nyam da dewa ji ra. Tina la ni kurang lung tsawo ka ze yon na ya ni donglen che de la pen shu chimbo shi u to sons. Kurang la da pen shu chimbo shi u to sons ra. Ni sam la tang du zamba ni ngarangi soba la ra. Ni kurang gi tsoda chigi du sam gi ra. Ngarangi soba gi nyamlen la tsoda chigi du sam gi dinde samlo yang khor gi yos ra. Samlo dinde tanga ya dige ni pe pen to dus. Ta ina ya dinde chujo tane samlo kaze tana ya sra. Tuyungo bo nala kayo lai china kurang la ta lung gi kanyi di yores kongro gi kanyi di. Che zang ni tsik zubu da mambo shiu shen gu dus tsam tsam yora kurang la. Ni te indu zamba ni tsam tsam tangda che du dus suso yora. Kadu ina ni ta kurang gi cho che nyamlen te son nga gi ni soba gi nyamlen la tsoda che gu dus sam kaze samlo tana ya. Kayo lai china ni suso kadu ina pajo gi tsizu ra. Tsizu di nyango che. Ani kap la thokba isa ingo do. Di dinde choba tun dina ani mo yi nying tina ani nga la tsewa da ji ayo ma yi san ro thokba sa ingo do sra. Ani che zang da dini di donglen khande che gore be sra.
Ta din ra chi china kyan la pamay na jido tsewe gi thoni ra pugu la ra pamay gi ta pugu ji dima sado ro china ta chigi pugu di gi chig lega noru ji che chi chira pamay di pugu la thak la ni shugu ra ine pamay la tsewa yor la ni yor ra khas ne ku maungba dini maje ya che do tsewe gi thoni ra ma kula magawa tang kula dubu ji chuna sa ni shugu ma ra chi china chirang pingya yin zang kyan la ji yakbu chuna sam 생구 치라네 제다 마시니 마한다네 파기 미들 너전도 차 요시기라 라 딘데지체 다야 미 라시 코란이야 치킨 로랑 추주 콘로랑 추주 딘데지요라 딘데 용디 갈라다 딜랑 저기 코라기다 라시 레사메도 당 저기 내다디 하고야라 미디 냠도 시우디디 코탄한데 딘데 시에디 이제레사메도 난데는 코 콘도 차오레사메도 치디들라 시라 신자 마제진 데니니 데니 땅선디고 라 다소소라 랍제도 다 고에네 냐고라 다다 된다 미주 mampu지 시데나 주디가라 산노타네 코덴데네 라유들라네 캬나라 마치에 소고야 라 아다가마 코라니 제 코라네 랑시 딘데 섬 딜레니 딜 땅선은 디고라 지제 진이 지랑이 다다레 저보 검색 유차고라 먼저 콘토면에 저바슬라 검라이저라 제가 딘데기 산다도 오늘 거랑 직춘이야네 지비잖아 아 저보 검색 유치래 아니 찌지네 코라니 제 직 셈바라신 미테 바로 직 녀서버서 시디니나 이제 제유라 라 아니 제다 코디 코라게 산노드랑 수투면도 카야다 보제통도 니제 유로라 근데 제제 다양 잠잠 키랑기 파 코라 망보시에는 직 생각하면 되어는데 이 말아 간다 직 가리네 코니 디버를 세게 쳐야라 코랑기 랍주디에 키랑 코누나 바다바질라고 이제 키랑게 코시 고 진세데 하코니 안 잠잠 딘디버를 지 코네티 되죠라 딘데 용식라 디나 아니 저랑이 디버를 세히체 디베 케치마라
So now maybe when we look at this example then we can make sense of such a situation. For example, the parents in a family have love, care and concern for the child and has the interest of the child at their heart. Now, but it is also the case that if the child places himself in front of harm, if the child begins to misbehave a little bit, then it is also the case that from time to time the parent begins to beat them, begins to reprimand them, speak harshly to them. Now when we look at that, it is not the case that the parents are doing it out of spite or a lack of care and concern. It is actually an expression of that very love, care and concern. But that is maybe not being expressed ideally, not being expressed in the most effective manner. So it's a little bit misguided in that sense. So as such, it is important to sometimes appreciate this, that those who are the closest to us, who have our best interest at their hearts, maybe are not able to express that effectively sometimes. And as such, it becomes manifest in the form of some harsh word and so forth sometimes. Now, the best way to kind of come to terms with a situation like this is through coming to accept the person for who they are. This is very important. Now, when I say accepting the person for who they are, then it's just an acceptance of their nature, their behavior, who they are as a person. So as such, for example, you understand that this person has and their very being is dictated by these anger issues that they have. So as such, any manner in which they express this, we shouldn't really become very reactive to these expression in their behavior and attitude. We need to appreciate that at their core, they have some issues that they are working through. So as such, we ourselves personally should not immediately react to the manner in which they express this through their attitude, behavior, or words. So as, for example, if you know that someone speaks very harshly, very rudely all the time, then you wouldn't really pay attention to all the words, to all the words that they speak all the time, because you know that he speaks in this manner. You have come to terms with it. You accept that they speak in this manner. So as such, it's not wise. It doesn't make sense to be so reactive to the words themselves. So that's what we mean by coming to terms with it, coming to accept them for who they are and the issues that they are working with, and not with that kind of acceptance, not to become so reactive to the manner in which they become expressed outwardly. And now, as you also specified, it is important to look at such people as objects of our forbearance, because in Buddhism we say without anger, how exactly are you going to cultivate forbearance as a practice? But more importantly, we should not simply look at it in such a self-serving way. Even when we say that such a person is the perfect object of forbearance, we, from a Buddhist perspective, must take into account that this forbearance, where does it come from? This forbearance should come from a place of love and compassion, that they are helpless when they become consumed by these afflictions. Not simply look at them as an object of forbearance in a self-serving way, but to ensure that this forbearance comes from a place of love and compassion. And now, most importantly, it's about communication. If we look about it carefully, you should be able to communicate the concerns you have to this person effectively, notwithstanding the reaction that they might have, to ensure that you do not react immediately when they are not so receptive of it, but to ensure that you try all means within all means that you have to effectively communicate your concerns, that you do not appreciate it, that it's unbecoming of them to hurl such verbal abuse at you, and you should not, notwithstanding their kind of reception of your concern, but you yourself should be able to come to a place wherein you are able to communicate this.
Yeah. Can I reply to that, or?
Tila lenja na digres.
Yeah. So I've been doing that because it's like action reaction kind of thing. So what I did, I withdraw one of the. I withdrew actually my reaction, and that I noticed that she's just suffering a lot, and then I don't feel it, So then it goes away. But the problem is now, is over the years, it's just that I just don't like
Kurangi lendo di da Dhagarang resra Nimani ani Pajugi tsu chik lap yang sosogi pala ne lendo chik che lendo jab dende chada ne kanyi shu chimbo cha resra jene Kurang samlo da korne ni Pajugi tsu chila na ya pala ne len machine ra soso rang sogom che godame ra dende che insra ina dende che na ya Paju di ni mutu ni nyang digi do asra kanyi Dhagarang yo mutu ni yo deresra 다 간이 슈체슈디 가르rel나 소소기 팔는내 마치 가지 지나 양서 퍼주기 시주를 주와민도스라 네 제자니 두즈 mambo지 드로잉도 잠바 콜 주와치 메도 잠바니 소소 미디냠 두즈 타양 거라 조와민도스다 이나 미디 소소 민 메세나라다 케첨보지 차기요레스라 빈자라 이나 덴데기 미 소소기 메세나라 미 케첨보지냠도 소소 통내 통고래라 이나 니 셈딩네 니 투즈로 똥님만도 좋아치냐민도스라 그까니 최쇼 어티레도스
지니 그런게 셈나야 강에 유준 나차 유준은 말아 근데이나 담발에 뒤져
do they have some sort of do they also have mental challenges not just anger issues
근데 이나 디라 그러기 직샘나 나타지는 어떤 희제 시작으라 디마이나 지단기 그 가르래도 전화라 디마제 디마타 디라 랍던로 나게나 그 샤자기 돈으로 와 니네 저랑이 그냥 랍줘도 야푸치티게나 디수전에 거야 되게 좀라 다양 직 된다 메조지 망보시 되나 다 당일에 디년된 당셔래 시다시 찌들 심도 상당히 근데 최고의 캠era 지단데 미직나 미직냠도데 근데 지나 갈래도 이제래데 데디 틱틱들 담만잖아 쇼쇼지 나서당 거야 캠era 봐 지니야 삼도 심바지다네 저랑이 미스나로 저랑이 빈자래 저도 미 dom주다 dom주 주려고 그래 민 잠는 미 참아가서 지기 샤탄데 빈자 운카보다 대 소소가 가실에 빈자가 요거로 말해 가시가 빈자 유로치나 시무지 유로치나 저저 유로치나 삼아야 되는데라 아 지금도 메지드네라 저는 타블레어치라 빈자 요라 안 지기 나차로 강의도 주네 그 저는 땅 말해서 라 그러나 저는 샷사타네 사당 마시니 아니 강의도 중금도 삼더라 근데 이제 산나다 제로 아니 디도르 갈래
and now generally I think it is important to understand the manner in which they hurl verbal abuse towards you. Does it come from a place of, from a sense of concern that they have towards you, wherein they want to advise you, they want to kind of help you, and in this manner, do they begin to speak harshly, or is it simply just verbal abuse plainly? tam morangi samjo do madrup ra mishinda gi morang la ani rewa chijo do madrup nasra ani moi si tsubuda she go tsubu
미심바 짠데 된다 말은 콜로노 되지
morang rangi samjo do ma chuna
거기 제단디 다 코나기 제단주라 거기 선스는 심하잖아 아유
so if you do not do things or act in a way that she expects you to then she begins to tell us
네, 근데 왜 저러다. 근데 미 산다나라지도. 지당이 미 지난도 이제 실로다 가사갈나 내단담을 돈이로 뭐라냐 신나 돈만이로 진담을도 산다나라. 지네 미카시 녜마기 루스다 도데로. 미카시 딘두기 지단담을 제고야도. 라. 지기 로존 지단이나래 계제 시단이나래 디버루라 따오만 되는데 레이다. 뺑게 빼서지 쇼에 내가 얘기 아말라래. 단단히 아자이 보여줘라. 다 카투콜다는 너도 스케 말해 딘두기 너다저라 당게만 아주 보고 춘지인데가라 밤에 칼라카르지는사 둘루 가르코는 둘루 레조이나 하린디 건데와라 다 딘두부디서 가셔올라나 다 찍배사로치 아니 콘솔랍다도 슐로가 따제토지 통사라 당아주 뭐뭐도 아마 콘솔 나알데 디디가라 디니 년담 거기도 무시 통고 말아 라 보고디 랍다도 야레오도 둘루 레조 패션 라이스도 dunzo kha trase bus ani dongla damda chu damda sogora 다 나와 치는 로마 다 되나래도 텐실링우다 이네 실로라 간서 따모데 가라 코란자 딘디군 도다지로 거라 디퍼로라 양서 제바질링우다 니니 이네 부디 칸을라나 셈바야보 럽저 야보 치고라 셈바야보여레 뭐뭐 가즈까지 다나고 저보 곰투니 라 이네 뭐뭐 빼까지 당다 쳐디니 치마 쳐 두어도 두어지민도 레워 아니게 뭐뭐에 센팅이 샤자요 그 야보 차로 지나 사메라 디브르랜드도 띵에 아마 라임바 개말다 디선 코랄럽좀 야보치 미 야보치 밀레네세 마제 펜센 데이 최선 차보 야보도 미딘도 왔어 실로라 타타메 버지 레조도 카나 코란스 디상게 도다레 팅안주 셈발마 쇼에 개체고 말해래 라임바 아니 지나코 보고 야보도 아메 정말 말다 디다 가요 그래서 바치가 말로라 차이레래 그 끊으디어 다데네 그 랩턴 럽존 텔레가치 단다 암코 셀러리 담보데 모모르테 다 예 인제 샤차여다 이네 부부거데다 담도 잠도 짰으니까 당아 날도는 모모까지 땅나 랩턴 럽존 쳐 날도는 시시 땅도 데리기 쿠스토고 차여 네 갈리갈리 인제 디네 단다 인제 베도 거라 칼라오다 거라가 모모라스 타다 디 세와 페여라 둘로도 가르년 모모라 년이 킬레그레 모모게 다 냥망이 산단지 레문도 그 오늘 아버지 산죠 근데 주루다 잠깐 빼네 근데도 요 초거라 저랑 원래 시전에 주니버도 근데도 차례 지르지 지디 실로근도 나다 딘지기 진도나치 기능 예마게 심부터 산나다데로 야 못다자 통제 칠리기 야 제바여라 근데기 바로 제바인게래서
So maybe I think that it comes from two different perspective that is shaped by different experiences, different circumstances and so forth. For example, it might be the case that you are well traveled, you have seen more of the world, so as such you develop maybe different values, different values, different expectations about what you want to do in your life, as opposed to maybe your family member who maybe does not have, still has traditional values, has not seen much of the world, so as such they have such traditional values. Now this is the challenge of this day and age, and it's a reality of human beings throughout the ages, that there are sometimes conflicts in values, in what people expect from themselves and from others. And now if we begin to only kind of argue and only begin to think about that, then our interaction cannot be meaningful at all. It will be good to realize that you cannot always live up to someone else's expectations. You shape your own values. And as such, if you come to that, come to terms with this, then you do not have, maybe you are not so bothered by someone not agreeing with your values and with your expectations of who you are and what you want to do. Now, maybe if I recount this personal story from my own family member, then it can give us some sort of insight into how, when we begin to think about these kind of differing values, and how, when we, even within the family, how this can be resolved eventually. For example, my mother's sister had a child, and now traditionally, in the old days, the parents basically raise up the child. And the child doesn't really question anything. Whatever the parent provides, the clothes, the food, basically the child kind of follows whatever the parents advises them, whatever the parents tells them. But now in this day and age, children are not like that. So this particular child, when he started to go to school, that child was, in all sense of the word, a modern child. They want new clothes, branded clothes. They want to bleach their hair. put on makeup and so forth, which stands in contradiction with the traditional values in which a typical nomadic family would raise their children. And as such, my mother didn't really like the way that the child was turning up to be. But bear in account that this child, even outwardly, this child was into fashion and all these things, but in their heart, they still they were very. The child was kind-hearted. The child had his studies, interested in his studies, and as such, even though as the child grew, the grandmother, my mother, always scolded him, saying that this child wouldn't turn up well at all in the future and so forth. But the child didn't ever. Of course, there were moments wherein they became frustrated and so forth, but never took it upon themselves to explain or to argue with the grandmother. Now they have already graduated, the child has graduated from school and started working, then the very first salary that they earned, they gave it to their grandmother. And through that kind of example, we can appreciate the fact that maybe it doesn't make sense to make an issue out of the different values, different expectations that we have of ourselves, but to come to terms with it, with our own actions, come to terms with it, with who we are as a person, how these values shape ourselves as a person. And now at this point, the grandmother and the child, even if they have such complete set of different values, no longer argue, no longer look at each other with a sense of disappointment and so forth. They are able to understand each other. So our own actions and the values and the manner in which the values that we develop shape us as a person should help us to address and breach that kind of gap in values and expectations.
Tandanya amakala nyamanya lara tini bukuni barang gendaro te zura indi chijo mare ani didure karine puwe chemosha sam tanda pudi kollai da sa tangi ngudi sa tanga pebegin do na yegodo sajala kasagala shinje te ruja kono mi dinda anga momongala kade chemboyi ani ngala chinju kala tak ngala kara khadalapja la khadu ni sheda ta ko sheshi par phone she ore pa tu na she ore pa kachutan me ya bu che je ho ta inde ko ha ko do chembuchan ngala ngam mitse ya po cha de momo ngala pe momola de alte nga chungres kade chumbres ta ngai momola pa chinje te do momola tulo ya po ya do tingi ngein san le do ra no momo ta ha ko do ara ko san ta da dire shas ko shulu number de ji ta se bon na bon dam da se ji ke chega chene tene nija rathoyaji do chuni galikali ane usigirwa wa ani ine chrangi kui kaju tanju da chran di chiri ji khud ba makha ji na chran ngole sehi che go ya de na chine ya boda zan mi de mi sehi chen do ra.
So when we look at this example, then I personally used to tell my mother, who was this child's grandmother, that he will turn all right in the future, that the child would grow up to be an adult, would turn out to be a good adult. And now this has come into fruition because as it is the Tibetan custom, then when a family member grows old, then the young people take it upon themselves to take the old family members on a pilgrimage tour of the Buddhist sites in different countries. So the child who is now grown up to be an adult is actually thinking of taking the grandma on a pilgrimage tour, and he's doing this because he understands that even though the grandmother always scolded him or always reprimanded him, that was her manner of expressing her love and compassion, love and concern for the child. Even though it wasn't communicated in the most effective way, but the child grew up to be a well-rounded individual exactly because of these advices, maybe not delivered in the most sweetest manner, shaped them. So as such, the child who's grown up to be an adult appreciates this. And this, at only this point, now the grandmother and the child have truly come to a place of true understanding. So if you also want to come to a place of true understanding between you and your family member, then we shouldn't expect true understanding to come about immediately. It takes time. Now it depends also on you being also, as a human being, able to communicate effectively your own concerns to that person.
단답변은 얘기고라 내지 거를 저는 참을 내는 파마 빈게 바로 이날에 제 저가쯤에 바로 이날에 도보 도모 바로 이날에 개개개루 바로 이날에 넌 참을 여러 내다 봐 칸 때마다 저 팀을 지르마더라 대서 걔는 참을 그때는 상당히 기쁘게 좀 봐.
So even though I address his question, I'm sure that even if we ourselves did not ask this question in our lives, we have such relationships between friends, family, relatives, student, teacher, whatever kind of relationship in our professional lives, we also face such challenges. So it is important to kind of reflect on these relationships in this manner.
You asked earlier a question about mental disturbance, and I'm wondering how this conversation or your responses would change if the person in question also has mental disturbance.
Tini dagin kogi chiwadila gishimagi ni di chi tsaji chisaso ko semkam debodo yo mare semji kanye yorbe ni kejachi chisaso kisi semji kanye yonasrada shishana midela semji kanye yona ni gishima chirangi lenji yora di juwaji tegi yorbe esra donlen chidangi tapshigi lenji
그 생각나 강이라. 네. 계속 그 생각나 강이나. 콜 마가 제말 다디 닌지 따르라. 라, 셈그 생각이 예비잖아. 한동안 저 줘발로나. 딜레 두드라. 그런데 바다라. 코랑이 가르라기들라. 딜레 수수니에 투는 니에 마투네 보조마로. 라. 계속 지나게 그게 내가 막아야지. 제급이 진짜도 그걸 야보지는 시. 배나 저런 빼도샤는 저런 러정도 치라게나. 라. 그 러정 제마가 내가 제도 가오이나. 아니 거기 딱 알려는 지는 용문도 대표선들아 알려는 시를 빼깔래 가고도 지지지데 니레샤 딜랭 알려가 차와나 가티 벤조 사야다 가리나 아니 마음방아 좀 무슨 도남나 야가 있어 세히 제게 좀라 지나게 생각문 나서 있는 것도 슈슈 딜레 다히 저서 싫어 유만을 삼더라 딜레 아니 타케보 간데조도 코랑이 더바나시 대 지투야당 세히 지투에 갈래 디 개참부를 했습니다.
Now if someone does have mental disturbance, mental health issues, then we really need to look at the manner in which we offer a response to them, we react to them, because then we have to really overcome all our concerns. We cannot expect and begin to project an expectation for them to accommodate, to understand where we come from. This is impossible. So as such, we should be willing to look at them as perfect objects of love and compassion, most deserving of our love and compassion. And just to listen to them, listen to what they are saying, because that is exactly what they need, someone who listens to them, even if they are not able to express themselves effectively, they just need someone who listens to them. So as such, we should be able, through our love and compassion for them, to bring ourselves to listen to them without reacting, without projecting our own frustrations onto them. And for example, we shouldn't really expect them to understand our own expectations, our own concerns when we interact with such a person. This is a little bit difficult, and if we begin to expect something like that, then maybe we are not interacting effectively with such a person.
간다 너 뒤에 파이를 생각 나서 옛날에 샤차 차차 옛날에 수수 샘라 칼로다 둥이 마소야 돼 계신 라 수수에 맞아서 코도로 차로라 수수 샘 때문에 투야 라 간데서 삼 담랑도 가르친 링자데 투에 베케지무라 정말 정말 투도.
So, in short, it is important that we always look at our own mental state and the manner in which our aspirations, our motivations affect our actions. Because unless and until we ourselves do not have any sense of conviction about our own aspirations and motivations, then our mental state is not stable. There is no stability, there is no conviction in what we do. And then we, over course of time, do not really become anything different from such a person. So as such, it is important to always cultivate that stability born from a conviction in our aspirations and motivations. Okay, so then time for lunch.
이렇게 돼야지.